Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. This response is to video by Zombie of God. It's a Sam Harris destroys theistic arguments. Now, he raises the issue of Christian particularism, and he's saying, this view, he actually addresses the Catholic Church, but it's a view by many. I think he might have addressed other churches and other denominations and things, and where the idea that you have to place your faith and believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ and this kind of thing to go to heaven and have salvation. And he says that raises problems because can we really have this much interaction and this much dialogue so that people can even know? And so as a response, we'll just go to Acts 17. And I won't, I'll just let Paul respond here. And Paul went to Athens, and he was in the areopagus, which was the commission for, commissioning new statues for new gods. Because he'd been talking about Jesus and the resurrection. They thought he was talking about a new god. And they're like, wow, we're going to need to build a new statue to keep our, keep our city safe. And so Paul gets a chance to explain things to them, and he takes a step back and goes back to kind of the more fundamental monotheistic concepts of his faith. And he says, the God who says, so Paul, standing in the midst of the areopagus, said, Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God in hope that they might feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is not far from each one of us. And he quotes from the Old Testament, says, In him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we indeed are his offspring. Alright, and we scroll on down. Sam Harris didn't spend much time on the issue of Christian particularism, and if you want to research that issue more, it's the issue of Christian particularism, that Christians are particular about, you gotta be Christian. Anyway, he says the concept of salvation makes one closed-minded to evidence against faith, and this whole concept, that we're saved, and he's got a point there that, hey, you've accepted something that's going to define you and your life and all this, for forever. That, your concept that we're going to heaven after we die and we're right with the God of the universe, it makes one closed-minded because one would have to change everything one thinks. If I get the gist of what Sam Harris is saying. And I would say that's true, but because of the nature of the claims made by religion, one cannot avoid having those views. So that if one does not have those views, one is closed-minded towards religion in the same sense, because one would have to change everything to become faithful, or to switch religions. So this is not really the nature of religion, it's just the nature of having a concept of everything, having a worldview. Now, if there were good reasons, he says then scientists would believe it. Again, would they? Would they? Because at least in the Christian faith, the claim is that, hey, we don't always, do exactly what we should. It'd be a wonderful world if everyone, just was presented with wonderful reasons and would just believe stuff. But I think we all experience in our everyday life the commonality of the fact that people resist good reasons and do dumb things all the time. And why should religion get be suddenly different? And all of a sudden, well, when scientists look at religion, all of a sudden, if they say that's how it is, like, people do dumb stuff all the time. And he just gave an argument for why, in regard to one's whole concept of everything, why this wouldn't necessarily be the most reasonable situation for people, that people wouldn't be the most reasonable in regard to this. Jesus even said in John chapter 3, they reject him because they love darkness and hate light. I mean, this is a huge issue. And we should not expect people just to be automatically reasonable. That's the last thing we should expect. Sam Harris. Okay. And I don't see how, the scientists are going to all of a sudden, not have baggage and bias about this. It's something you have to deal with, for yourself, and it's a personal thing, am I being biased or not? It's not something you can just make statements like, oh, these people there and those people aren't, come on. Anyway, now he says what people do in regards to science is they insert faith as believing in something when there's no reason not to. In other words, he's saying, faith is like this excuse for being crazy, and that's not faith biblically, even though I wouldn't disagree with him that that's the way the word is used a lot today. But if you go to where the Bible and Christianity and the foundations, it's not what the word faith really meant. We must understand that the New Testament was written in a language of Greek mythology and Greco-Roman mythology, and they used words that had links to Greco-Roman gods. In fact, the word for faith is, pistis, and it's linked to the word I believe, pistuo, but literally it goes back to this patho, I'm persuaded. And it carries the idea that you believe this because you were persuaded to believe it. And this really links back to the Greek goddess Patho, who was a consort of Aphrodite. And so we shouldn't take these words in their, at least in their foundations, as having, all these Christian undertones. This word, literally meant that you did not believe something and you were persuaded to put your trust in it. And the Christians did try to give new meaning to the word, but it never meant this sense that we use it today sometimes, that you believe something even though you have no reason to. That is not where they were going with it in the first place when they first tried to use it. And in fact, we make a distinction between faith and belief, but in the New Testament and in the Greek language which it was written, translate pistuo, I believe, and pistis, faith, is the same root, patho, to be persuaded. So anyway, he says sometimes Christians will argue there's no conflict between science, and so you can't disprove religion. Sometimes they'll argue this route. They'll say you can't disprove religion, and he brings up Bertrand Russell's Celestial Teapot, and I'm with you 100% on this, Sam Harris. I mean, I had someone once argue that like you couldn't breathe in smoke from burning styrofoam, but they had no evidence for it. They just said it's possible, so you should watch out. And I'm gonna act like it doesn't happen, even though I don't know. I agree with you. If you can say, well, we don't know there's a God, and we don't know there's not a God, and we don't know anything, then let's just act like there's not one. Yeah, you need evidence to believe in God. I would agree with that. Now, you need evidence to assert that there is no God, too. But anyway, he then talks about people who assert that there is evidence for God. And what Harris claims is that a huge ad hoc fallacy is what takes place whenever scientific evidence for God happens. And what an ad hoc fallacy is it's like I tell you that I can jump tall buildings in a single bound, and then you say, well, let's go jump a tall building, I want to see you do it. And I say, well, I can't do it on Wednesdays. Like, oh, okay, well, you wait till Thursday. All right, let's do it today. Oh, I can't do it on Thursdays either. And we go through the whole week, and you say, well, when can you do it? because we've gone through all the days of the week, and I say, well, I could only do it 2,000 years ago with those guys, but there's a story about it, and ad hoc fallacy. In other words, you come in afterwards and adjust what you believe or your explanation until it's not really an explanation anymore. It's just a description of the facts, where you can, and he's saying, your belief in God is so adjustable that it's impossible to test. It's untestable. And one problem with this is that right off the bat, that it should hit you right in the face, is, Sam Harris, you think there are good reasons not to believe in God. You obviously think there's some sort of testability. And when I say good reason not to believe in God, what I mean is you don't believe in God. You think that, there's a lack of evidence, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But then he says that the Christian scientists somehow make an equivocation fallacy, and they say if they find something compatible with God, they jump to, by virtue of this ad hoc, they jump to sort of an equivocation where they say, well, that leads one to believe in God. And he's saying that that's a false leap you've made. And then he gives some examples. And this is where Sam Harris appears to have an agenda. He picks his examples. 99% of all species are extinct. And he says, that doesn't lead me to believe in God. Holocaust is letting evil, get a wonderful run at it. And that doesn't lead me to believe in God. Sam Harris, you pick your examples. The Bible and religion made no prediction that there won't be a Holocaust. And it made no prediction that there weren't a lot of extinctions before the creation of man. The Bible, if you look in Genesis, it goes through the lists of ancient gods that people believed in, and it says this thing, when we get to this thing, this was made by God, next this and next that. And it doesn't say anything about, the natural history of the earth intentionally. It's talking about whether or not these ancient people should fear the gods of other nations. And then with the Holocaust, the Bible didn't say there won't be a Holocaust or there will be a Holocaust. So, of course, we can be, adjustable, and religion can say, well, yeah, I guess that God, let that happen. But, duh, because the religion never made a prediction about the Holocaust. And he specifically appeared to pick examples where, ta-da, they're just adjusting their belief in God. Well, I mean, it's so odd that you bring up a lack of predictive capability when it comes to religion, because the people who have faith seem to think there's a lot of predictive capability. They look at prophecies about Jesus and they say, look, this was predicted, this was predicted, this was predicted, and voila, it all happened just like it was predicted. Why can't we talk about those examples where the Bible did make some predictions, some very distinct, refined, specific, and not only did it say what would happen, it said what will be the interpretation and what will be the meaning of these events. And that's just one example. I'm sure I'll leave it to you to think of other examples. We need to include a better list of examples. And then Harris seems to leave out, what about philosophical deduction for the existence of God? Because a lot of if God exists, it would be he would have to be necessary. He would have to exist, because no one could say that, oh, well, God, was made by Willie T. Fred. No. If God exists, then God is it, and He has to be. It's like saying, 1 + 1 makes 2. If that's true, then it just has to be true. And so, what about philosophical deduction? Not so much evidence, and he seems to leave that out too. So anyway, I guess another example that he left out is, the Bible clearly claims the universe began to exist. Ta-da! With Big Bang. Yeah, they found that with their observations. Okay? The Bible claims the world will stop existing. Ta-da! They found that. A variety of ways. The earth will end, and then they even claim the universe will end. Now, does everything agree exactly with what people interpret from the Bible? No, but we've got to give some credence to the fact that the Bible made predictions, and they seem to be backed up. Specific, concrete predictions. So anyway.